It was a warm Saturday afternoon, the kind that made the neighborhood lawns glow with fresh-cut grass and the hum of sprinklers. For Marcus, a respected police commander, this day was supposed to be simple. He had just returned from the grocery store, arms heavy with bags filled with the week's essentials. Away from the uniform, he was just a father, a husband, and a neighbor trying to enjoy a peaceful weekend. The community was quiet, but not welcoming. Living in a homeowners association neighborhood often meant unwritten rules: who belonged, who didn't, and who was always being watched. Marcus had grown used to the stares, the subtle pauses in conversation when he walked by, and the way people clutched their purses a little tighter. But he carried himself with dignity, knowing his position demanded composure, even when others failed to show him respect. As he walked toward his home, the sound of laughter cut through the calm. A boy, no older than 12, was standing with his mother, eyes fixed on Marcus's grocery bags. What started as curiosity turned into demand, the child insisting those bags should be his. The request was absurd, almost laughable, but the tension in his mother's eyes told Marcus this wasn't just childish misbehavior. It was entitlement, sharpened by prejudice, ready to ignite into something far uglier. What Marcus didn't know was that this encounter would spiral far beyond groceries, into a confrontation that would expose truths his neighbors were never prepared to face. Marcus tried to brush off the boy's strange demand, shifting his grocery bags higher in his arms as he continued toward his house. But the boy's voice rose louder, sharp with entitlement, as though he had every right to claim what wasn't his. The mother, standing nearby, didn't correct him. Instead, her lips curled into a thin, knowing smile. In her eyes, Marcus wasn't a neighbor, not a man who had earned every ounce of what he carried. He was simply someone who didn't belong. She stepped forward, her tone sharp and cutting, insisting Marcus hand over the groceries to her son. At first, Marcus thought it was a joke, some misunderstanding, but her glare told another story. This wasn't about groceries, it was about control, about sending a message. To her, Marcus was someone she could humiliate, someone she could reduce to nothing more than a trespasser with bags in his hands. Neighbors peeked from behind blinds, curiosity growing like wildfire. Marcus could feel their stares pressing into his back. He had dealt with stares before, on the street, in stores, even in meetings where his badge didn't shield him from prejudice. But this felt different. This was hostility brewing in broad daylight, and the crowd was silently choosing sides. When Marcus refused to give in, the woman's voice cracked into a shrill command. She pulled out her phone, dialing with trembling fingers, not from fear, but from eagerness. She announced loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I'm calling the police. He's threatening us." Marcus froze. Those words carried weight, heavy as stone. He knew too well what such accusations could mean. In moments like this, truth was often drowned out by perception, and perception was shaped by bias. He glanced at the onlookers. No one intervened. No one corrected her. Silence, as always, became complicity. Every second stretched into an eternity. Marcus's pulse quickened, not from guilt, but from the familiar dread of being painted as dangerous in a world where that label could destroy lives. He stood still, groceries clutched in his arms, while she relayed her distorted story to the dispatcher, embellishing every detail, painting herself and her son as victims. The boy smirked, emboldened by his mother's call. To him, this was victory, a lesson that entitlement always won when backed by privilege. For Marcus, it was a chilling reminder of how quickly ordinary moments could be weaponized against him. The sirens weren't far off. Their faint wail grew louder, echoing through the streets, each second tightening the knot in Marcus's stomach. He had been on the other side of these calls countless times, but never as the target. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a test of survival. As the sound of approaching patrol cars drew closer, neighbors leaned in, whispering among themselves. Some looked uneasy, others entertained. Marcus's hands trembled, not from fear of the law, but from the cruel irony about to unfold. Because the woman didn't know the truth. The man she had painted as a threat wasn't just a black neighbor with groceries. He was the very authority she believed would side with her. And now, the moment of truth was racing toward them, carried on the sound of sirens. The patrol cars screeched to a halt, red and blue lights flashing across the neatly trimmed lawns. Officers stepped out, hands resting on their belts, eyes darting from Marcus to the frantic woman waving them over. She clutched her son close, her voice trembling, but her fear was a performance. She pointed at Marcus, her words sharp and loud enough for every neighbor to hear. "That man tried to take my son's things. He threatened us." The weight of her lie hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. Marcus didn't move. Every instinct screamed at him to defend himself, to shout the truth. But he knew better. He knew how quickly voices could be twisted, how easily anger could be mistaken for aggression. The officers approached, their hands tensing as though ready for escalation. Neighbors stepped closer, phones out, recording, waiting to capture a spectacle. Marcus's heart pounded, not from guilt, but from the cruel knowledge that one wrong move could end everything. Then came the silence, thick, uneasy, as the officers finally looked him in the eye. Recognition flickered. One leaned back, his expression shifting from suspicion to stunned disbelief. They knew who he was. Not Marcus, the suspicious neighbor, not the man clutching grocery bags, but Commander Marcus, their superior. The crowd gasped as the realization settled. The woman's confident smirk faltered, her grip on her son tightening as if she could shield him from the truth. The officers turned, their faces stern, no longer aimed at Marcus, but at her. For the first time, she looked uncertain. For the first time, the power she thought she controlled slipped from her hands. And in that fragile moment, the entire street held its breath. Because the balance of power had shifted, and justice was about to speak. The officers stood firm, their attention no longer on Marcus, but on the woman who had tried to twist the truth. Her words stumbled, her excuses unraveling under the weight of authority she hadn't expected to challenge her. For Marcus, it was a rare moment of vindication, but not a victory. Because, while the truth had spared him this time, the damage had already been done. He gathered his groceries with steady hands, refusing to let them see how deeply the incident cut. To the crowd, it looked like justice had been served. But Marcus knew better. He had lived enough of these moments to understand. The danger wasn't just the false accusation, it was how quickly people believed it. The neighbors, who had stayed silent as she spun her lies, shifted uncomfortably now. Some averted their eyes, others whispered half-hearted apologies, but silence had already spoken louder than any words could. Silence had chosen a side. Marcus walked home that evening, not as the police commander who had been vindicated, but as a black man reminded once again of the fragility of safety in a world that still questioned his place in it. His title, his service, his achievements, none of it had protected him in those first critical moments. This story is not just about one man, one lie, or one neighborhood. It's about the reality that millions face every day. The weaponization of prejudice, the danger of silence, and the truth that racism does not fade with time. It only hides, waiting for the next moment to strike. So the question lingers, heavy and unavoidable. How many more Marcuses must stand accused? How many more lives disrupted before a community chooses courage over silence? Before justice isn't a twist ending, but the starting point?